Can you do Epcot without lightning lanes? We think so. Here's how you do it. I'm Shannon from wdwprepschool.com, and I was just recently in a Disney World, a sentence I can say often because I'm there often. And we did some terrain plan testing at Epcot. And the point of our testing at Epcot was actually related to the lighting lanes. But what we found was we could totally have done it without them. Now, I am not a person that's going to go without lighting lanes. If I actually want to go on the rides and reduce weights, I'm going to probably spend the money. But it isn't necessary at least two of the parks, Epcot and Animal Kingdom. It's very optional. So I wanted to talk through it because if you're a person that wants to not spend all the money at Epcot for lighting lanes, then this is the way to do it. So we did two different things. So we were staying at Art of Animation Resort, and Heather went on the Skyliner to International Gateway, and I took a ride share to the front of Epcot. $17. That's way too much money, but it was surge pricing, and we were there to test. So from our two different points in the park, we decided to do two different approaches and see if it worked. So she went to Remy's and I went to Guardians because those are the rides that are the closest to those. We were within the first, I would say 100 people there for early entry. So, that's pretty near the front of the pack and allows you to be one of the first to board the ride for the day. And so we both went to our attractions and we were able to ride them without a wait within the first part of early entry. Heather had a little bit of a snag because Remy's had a delayed opening. So instead of starting at 8:30, I think it started at 8:38. So, but she got off of it easily, and I was in the first people to ride Guardians. So I got off Guardians. After I rode Guardians, I went to Test Track and rode it in the single rider line. And at this point, the single rider line was open because single rider lines often aren't open during early entry. So I had to kind of make sure it was available, but there was nobody in it. Like there's something weird that's happening where people don't seem to know Test Track has a single rider line. But in my row, it was actually me and another single rider because it just wasn't that busy yet. Heather's second ride was Frozen Ever After. So she went there and still no wait. So she was able to do two rides, no wait. And I guess I was too, because I did Test Track single rider. So then we literally high-fived as we were walking. So she went to Test Track as her third ride. I went to Frozen Ever After as my third ride. And in doing this, she didn't have a wait on Test Track through the single rider line. So she did three in a row without a wait. And I went to Frozen Ever After, and it was about a 15-minute wait. So still not too bad. Still not too bad. We still haven't used any lightning lanes. We still aren't waiting a wild amount of time or anything. So from there, we both decided to head over to the land. Now, one thing about what I'm saying is it's a lot of crisscrossing because we are literally just trying to sweep the park and do all of the headliners as easily as we can without long waits. And this is the way to do it. Epcot is just unfortunately a huge park. So you kind of have to walk. You get all your steps in by lunchtime, that's for sure. So we went over to the land. And in our case, we did stop and have breakfast at Sunshine Seasons for 30 or 40 minutes and go to the restroom because we had lightning lanes for Soarin' and Living with the Land. However, as we were sitting there, like when we arrived to the land, there was no wait on Soarin' or Living with the Land. So if you add that to the list of things that we've already done, we could have done those without any lightning lanes and without waiting. So that is most of the headliners. Right now, Spaceship Earth is closed. It'll reopen late 2025. So that'll be another ride to consider. It's not like it's a roller coaster, but it's certainly a ride on the list that people would be interested in. But once you have Remy's, Guardians, Test Track, Soarin' done, then everything else is pretty easy. I do still recommend getting a single pass lightning lane for Guardians because I was able to ride it again later in the day. But if in the case of Heather coming in from the International Gateway, she could have, done her whole terrain plan and then gone on Guardians with a single pass lightning lane and not had to wait. She, in her particular case, doesn't ride Guardians because it makes her very sick. But I think even if you choose not to do multi-pass lightning lanes for Epcot, that getting the single pass makes a lot of sense. Especially if you're going to start at the International Gateway and do that method, or if you want to ride it twice, which is what I ended up doing. So just to recap, to make it easy and in a line, from the front of the park, it's easy to go to Guardians first. and then to do single rider at Test Track, and then Frozen Ever After with a relatively low weight, and then Soarin' and Living with the Land. That order, little bit of walking. I didn't get to ride Remy's in this scenario, but I got to ride most of them. Coming from the International Gateway, if you wanted to do Remy's, and then Frozen Ever After, and then single rider on Test Track, and then Soarin' and Living with the Land, and then have a single pass lightning lane for Guardian, then that would sweep all of the headliners. And then you would have the rest of the day. I kind of like the idea of doing all the rides in the morning and then focusing on the World Showcase when it starts at 11 or shortly after, and then just kind of spending the rest of the day that way. It's just requires some walking around so that you can optimize your time and avoid waits. You kind of trade walking time with low wait times, but that's just kind of how it works. But anyway, I would highly suggest doing an order like that. Make sure that you are at the front of the pack for the day. In Heather's case, she was at the Skyliner station, I want to say an hour and a half before early entry began. And there was very long lines, but don't let it scare you if you're on a Skyliner resort, because the lines just really, really grow. And then once they start the Skyliner, it is a continuous loader. If you're on the buses, we do still recommend being at the bus stop at your hotel 90 minutes before early entry if you want to be at the front of the pack for early entry. I took rideshare, so that makes it easy because there's no waiting. I have more control over my schedule, but I was still at the front of the pack from the front of the park. If you are a person that does want to use lightning lanes for Epcot, we do have cheat sheets or like handy graphics that we have to suggest which ones to book for your trip, but it's totally doable without. If you are interested in lightning lanes for Epcot, I will link to those in the show notes here. And I will include the graphics of our days that we did, like with timestamps and everything that you can look for before the video is over. So anyway, I hope that's helpful. And maybe it's one of the parks that you don't have to buy lightning lanes for. I know it can really add up. So thanks for joining. Let us know if you have any questions.